Hello and welcome to our Sisvel Wi-Fi 6 webinar. This webinar is about the patent pool that Sisvel recently launched and the new royalty payment structure called Lyft, Licensing Incentive Framework for Technologies, that has been launching together with this patent pool. Today I have, together with me, a number of very distinguished panelists who are going to be contributing to selected topics to the benefit of the audience. I would like to note that the videos, the contributions of these panelists are pre-recorded. We have been choosing this structure so to ensure the participation of all these key contributors to this webinar. And specifically, the speakers that you will listen to are Shah, who's Vice President of Research and co-founder at Counterpoint Research, which is a market data provider very experienced in the Wi-Fi market. Andrea Rombola, who works at Sisvel and is program manager of our Wi-Fi 6 pool. Bo Hayden, who's executive director at the Tertiary Center at Berkeley and maintains still his co-directorship at the Center for Intellectual Property. Alan Fan, who's vice president and head of the IPR department at Huawei. Jin Sam Kwak, who's founder and CEO at WILUS. And Jako Eleveld, who's vice president and head of IP licensing at Philips. And together with the speakers today, we will introduce you to the launch of our Wi-Fi 6 patent pool. We will describe you how the patent pool has been created. We will inform you about the economic and social value that is delivered by Wi-Fi. And most importantly, we will try to truly introduce this pool to you through the eyes of both licensees and licensors, providing the reasons why these companies are actually looking positively at this patent pool. Our patent pools typically are always launched with the purpose of generating efficiencies in the market, the purpose of reducing friction, and of course, also the purpose of rewarding innovators for the patent owners who have been investing so heavily for the creation of the underlying innovation that is enabling these new technologies. But at the same time, this patent pool has been launched with a very clear aim. The aim to accelerate the market penetration early, to enable early participation of licensees, to reduce the barriers for the early adoption of licenses. So we really have been trying to create a win-win for licensees and licensors, making sure that there is the appropriate motivation for both parties to participate to this patent pool. And we really think that this new payment structure, this royalty structure, the licensing incentive framework for technologies, is an innovative and new payment plan that can be an example of this clear focus on generating win-win solutions. So without any further ado, let me launch the first contribution.
The advent of Wi-Fi, also known as technically 802.11 standard, was created and maintained by Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers IEEE Landman Standards Committee. So it was 1997 when was the first base standard introduced, and since then IEEE group of engineers and researchers have worked relentlessly over the next 22 years to transform the entire technology of Wi-Fi from 802.11a to B to G to N, which is also called as Wi-Fi 4, AC, which is called Wi-Fi 5, AX Wi-Fi 6, and now BE Wi-Fi 7. So if you look at in terms of the overall Wi-Fi evolution, close to 40 billion Wi-Fi devices have been shipped since the first base standard launched, and close to 18 billion Wi-Fi devices are in use for personal as well as enterprises, unlocking significant value, connecting everyone to internet for content creation, content consumption, and driving of productivity. In the age of globalization, standards offer a foundation to drive technological innovation. It helps companies build different breakthrough solutions. Standards further break down the complexity of solutions into better cost structure, greater interoperability, better security, expanding the consumer choice for the innovation to scale and benefit the entire society. So IEEE is one of those organizations built with technological professionals and researchers which get together to develop such global scale technical standards in form of Wi-Fi with collaboration across more than 160 countries and in a very and the entire process managed in a very sophisticated way. So 802.11 or Wi-Fi, right? It's one of the most successful technology standard developed with multiple contributors within IEEE across the globe pouring billions of dollars in research and development and contributing toward building a global scale wireless technological standard where allowing billions of users and millions of companies to connect to internet. So this investments for the IEEE standards or the Wi-Fi standard, which has transformed into almost a significant breakthrough for the entire industry, is based on standard essential patents from these IP contributors, which is eventually monetized via bilateral licensing agreements or patent pools. Wi-Fi has revolutionized both consumer and enterprise segments on connecting with each other as well as connecting different devices to the internet. If you look at the consumer, which is mostly for personal or home use, we have plethora of Wi-Fi based devices from smartphones, tablets, laptops, smartwatches, AR/VR devices, routers, connected appliances, speakers, thermostat, and even car. They all use Wi-Fi and have taken the communication, content creation, content consumption to the next level with every generation of Wi-Fi. When we look at the enterprise, Wi-Fi technologies has helped across different applications, right from laptops, printers, gateways, cameras, desk phones, POS devices, even medical instruments in hospitals to drive significant productivity, business communication, commerce, and unlocking a lot of economical benefits. So the overall personal enterprise benefits of Wi-Fi has been significant. So if you look at the Wi-Fi market, close to 3 billion devices are Wi-Fi based devices shipped annually if you consider key categories across the industry. This contributes to almost 1.2 trillion in hardware revenues just in 2021. It's just 1 year. And if you further drill down, close to $16 billion worth chipsets of Wi-Fi went into these devices, which is just 1.4% of the total Wi-Fi hardware revenue. And when you calculate further the potential revenues for the creators developing these standard essential patents for Wi-Fi in terms of intellectual property, for them the potential TAM is roughly $1.4 billion, which is just 0.12% of the total Wi-Fi device shipment and hardware revenues. So this is how the market looks like in terms of the overall TAM potential. When you add on top of it the overall economic value and benefits, it's another $1 trillion worth revenue which can be, or potential value which can be unlocked. So if you look at last 2 decades, from 1999 since the first Wi-Fi standards was introduced till 2019, close to 30 billion Wi-Fi devices were shipped cumulatively. However, since the pandemic in 2020, we have seen the demand for high quality Wi-Fi broadband routers, devices have gone up to the roof. We are doing almost everything digitally, right from learning to business communications, personal communication, content consumption, as well as commerce. So within these 2 years of pandemic, actually within these 2 years, 2020 and 2021, we saw almost 10 billion Wi-Fi based devices shipped just in 2 years, and it took 2 decades to ship 30 billion Wi-Fi devices. So you can see the amount of demand or the Wi-Fi value it unlocks, right? So based on our estimates as well as Wi-Fi Alliance, we estimate there was a close to 20 to 25% jump in terms of economic value, which was created extra because of Wi-Fi and the whole pandemic situation. And we think this particular value, which is currently 3.5 trillion per year, will almost double in next 5 years.
The current pool participants are now shown on screen. As we all know, a pool is generally a joint effort, open to all those parties who share the same views, accept the same terms, and play by the same rules. I really like this representation of the pool as a tree, which is meant to grow leaves as time goes by. Here are the current pool members, which now include Panasonic, the latest patent owner and licensee who joined, as announced a few days ago. Huawei is among the largest patent holders, also in this pool, as in most of the statistics out there, and Alan will explain better how they got here. Sam from WILUS and Jako from Philips will also spend some words as to how important their participation to this pool is for them, and why it should be for new patent owners, and, of course, for the technology implementers out there. This group of patent owners is believed to hold more than 200 patent families, and, without getting too technical, we can comfortably say that this portfolio represents a considerable portion of the IP relevant for this technology. We have two different royalty rates, one for enterprise access points and the other one for the rest of what we define finished products. That is basically every device that can be used in its final form by final customers. The first group is a subset of the second one and describes access points that are meant to provide Wi-Fi connectivity to tens or hundreds of devices in large areas. All details can be found out by reviewing the template sublicense agreement that is publicly available on our website, and or by contacting Sisvel's licensing team. Other than the template sublicense agreement, we make available or readily available various materials that are important to understand and evaluate the pool offer. We also provide, attached to our notification letter, the full list of patents and an explanation of how the royalty rates have been built, and since we're talking about SEPs, their fair nature. We make available, upon request, access to a data room containing exemplary claim charts, useful to assess the strength of the assets from a technical point of view. Last but not least, we published explanatory material regarding what we consider a revolutionary way of granting licenses, the Licensing Incentive Framework for Technologies, or more simply, Lyft. You will find an article dedicated to Lyft on Sisvel's blog, which is where we publish articles of general interest regarding our licensing programs and our activities in general. When it comes to Lyft, the system was born out of our vision at Sisvel, which is the one to create licensing programs that accelerate technology adoption and increase the size of the pie for patent owners and implementers. As you'll hear from Bo in a few minutes, one problem is in licensing negotiations is the competitive disadvantage perceived by early licensees, which claim, among others, that they need to factor in a bigger cost in the bill of material, the cost of the license, than their competitors, which have not taken a license yet. Bo calls it the prisoner's dilemma. We say nobody wants to be the first. After years of interaction with patent holders and implementers of several technologies, we realized that in certain areas like Wi-Fi, the problem could be mitigated. We came up with Lyft, which has been over 2 years in the making, and it has been fine-tuned with the help of the founding members of this pool. All of them like the concept behind it and very enthusiastically engage in discussions with us and help create what we today feel is a very balanced solution to serve the interest of both licensees and licensors, which is what pools are generally appreciated for. You'll hear a lot of technical jargon from the various speakers in the next minutes, but here's a quick video we put together to describe the rationale behind the system. I hope you enjoy it.
No one wants to be the first. Normally, being first to take a license for a technology means paying when your competitors don't. But what would happen if taking a license first gave you a competitive advantage? Sisvel's new Lyft scheme addresses this by adjusting your royalty payment based on the percentage of the market that's licensed. You can defer most of your payments unless and until when your competitors also pay. Normally, taking a license means committing to pay 100% of liability. With Lyft, first movers pay less, not more. The commitment to pay is progressive. If only a small portion of the market is licensed, most of the liability is deferred until when competitors actually pay. What isn't paid immediately is added to a basket of unpaid liability, which is also paid in accordance with the market penetration and is discounted and depreciated over time. Adopting Lyft, you enjoy the protection and certainty the license provides, but pay only a fraction of the due royalties unless and until competitors also take the license. You're protected legally and financially. Sisvel is committed to creating licensing terms that work for patent owners and technology implementers, that help shorten technology time to market, accelerate market penetration, and level the playing field. Are you ready to be the first?
Well, if we just go back to the general prisoner's dilemma that comes out of classic game theory, it describes the behavior of actors faced with a strategic decision to cooperate or not. And in this classic scenario, two suspects are questioned separately by the police. The best outcome would be for both the suspects to stay quiet. However, if one suspect talks, the consequences are worse for the suspect that stays quiet. Thus, while the suspects would be better off protecting one another, each of them is incentivized to act in their own self-interest, which produces a worse result than cooperating. Yeah, so building on the prisoner's dilemma, the analogy in SEP licensing is that both licensors and licensees would benefit from collaboration in the long term, but in the short term, they have incentives that block their initial collaboration from even starting. So if we use this illustration that I show on the screen, you can see from the diagram that from the starting point of the licensors and licensees and licensors can be quite divergent from each other, even though they converge in the long term. So for example, licensors might feel the need for higher royalties in the beginning because the number of licensees is low, while licensees in the bottom here may feel that they need a lower licensee because they don't want to pay too much until everyone else is already paid that they compete with. So in the beginning, both the licensors and the licensees can have very divergent incentives about how to participate in a pool, even though they would all agree that if we get to a stage where a lot of people are participating, they can agree on this long-term royalty rate. They won't agree on a short-term one, which could block the whole pool or platform from being started in the first place. So Sisvel developed Lyft model aimed at incentivizing early adoption of licenses by focusing on these incentives that we spoke about to remove this asymmetry between early adopters and reluctant licensees. So we're focusing, as you see from the diagram, on the licensees in this scenario to try to get them to start up and get the network effects going right from the very beginning. So Lyft incentivizes these licensees by providing for a partial immediate payment that's based on the license penetration. And then there's a deferred amount of remaining liability that they pay later on as the penetration goes up, and they pay this at a discount so that the early adopters are not at a disadvantage against later adopters. So if you look at the diagram, you'll see again that we have this long-term royalty rate that everyone agrees on in the long term. But in the short term, the licensees would like to see a smaller amount until the participation gets to a certain threshold percentage. So they pay less immediately, but the amount that they would have paid is kept as a deferred royalty. And this deferred royalty is paid out over time as the penetration goes up, and it's paid off as a discount in order to give the early adopters, so they don't have a disadvantage against later adopters. So this simple diagram shows that how they pay less in the beginning. It ramps up as participation grows. They carry this liability as a deferred royalty, and that only is paid if the participation gets to a certain level. The overall goal of Lyft is to increase efficiency and reduce friction within the SEP market. So when you create a platform that incentivizes a large proportion of licensors and licensees to participate, it benefits all the parties involved. So one way to say this is a rising wave lifts all ships. Now, there are also two specific areas of benefits that incentivize early adopters. So the first one is the depreciation of any deferred amounts over time. At every reporting period, the amount of unpaid royalties deferred from the previous periods is depreciated before deciding the new cumulative deferred liability. That's the first one. The second one is a direct reduction of the payable deferred amounts, in particular the outstanding deferred liability. So this reduction is dynamic and depends on the number of consecutive periods for which a certain licensee has been licensed under the structure. And this applies to deferred amounts only once the deferred amount is payable. There are several reasons why Lyft is particularly suitable for Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi, as many of you know, in general, and Wi-Fi 6 in particular, has a large global market adoption, billions and billions of devices. That's the first one. There's also both a large number of licensees and licensors. So creating a pool or a platform, such as using the Lyft model, would significantly lower the transaction costs and facilitate innovation among this large community of actors working in the space. Wi-Fi pools also have historically been difficult to scale due to the heterogeneity of the actors. So a unique model such as Lyft is particularly needed to overcome the obstacles of collaboration. So while Lyft is particularly well suited for the technology areas like Wi-Fi, for the reasons that I've just explained, it illustrates Sisvel's desire to create pools that encourage a sustainable approach that facilitates long-term benefits to both patent owners and implementers. This is why I personally promote these platform solutions that include both licensors and licensees in the development, so as to be able to overcome these prisoner's dilemmas that we spoke about before.
Our record shows Huawei has been using Wi-Fi since 2003, and we started by using it in our products, but later we gradually increased our investment in the standardization of it. Yeah, we started our development in about a decade ago. It was in early 2012. We founded a team, what we call as 10G5. It was meant to develop the next generation of Wi-Fi technologies. And so about a month later, Dr. Osama, one of our Canadian colleagues, was elected as the chair for AO2.11ax task group, the task group which later developed what we call Wi-Fi 6 now. And so Huawei had really a lot of experience in wireless field. We have thousands of wireless engineers, and they're backing our standard team. And so we introduced many technologies, new technologies into Wi-Fi 6. That would include OFDMA, that would also include things like uplink MIMO. And with our contributions, of course, also contributions from other standard contributors, and the Wi-Fi 6 can do a lot more than Wi-Fi 5. For example, it can connect up to 200 devices using a single AP. That's about 10 times of what a Wi-Fi 5 can do. Patent pool is an efficient way to license. And for the Wi-Fi technologies, it's a little bit different from, for example, cellular technologies. The market is highly distributed, and we're talking about thousands of implementers here. And so it's really difficult or very, very expensive for the licensors to license their patents to this many number of potential licensees. And that would render, if we just do it bilaterally, that would really render the cost unaffordable for the licensors. Huawei is a leading product manufacturer, and we have a lot of Wi-Fi products ranging from TVs to smartphones. So we need a license from other patent owners as well, just like any other Wi-Fi users. And we respect other patent owners' patents and their contributions to the standard, and they deserve a return so that they can fund their future R&D. And the pool is the efficient way for the patent users or the standard users really to get a license from a good number of patent owners at the same time. I think the Lyft is a very creative way to do licensing to encourage early adoption of new technologies, and it helps the new licensees to maintain their competitiveness against the companies who yet to take the license. But Lyft is really something creative and transparent, and that's important for FRAND negotiation because we're talking about a standard essential patent here. And so this is really something innovative and creative. I think will bring a lot of success to the new technologies such as Wi-Fi.
Let's start with IEEE 802.11 Working Group. This working group is a global standard setting organization for Wi-Fi. Initially, the original version of the IEEE 802.11 standards first released in 1997. For 20 years, 802.11 has developed its amendments to accommodate new innovations proposed by the global experts for the next generation Wi-Fi. The market today uses Wi-Fi 6 11AX, which is theoretically provide the peak data rate of 9.6 Gbps. In terms of the data rate, the evolution of IEEE standards increases data rate by hundreds of times over 20 years. In 2014, 11AX task group started with the requirements, including more than 4 times higher increase in average throughput over 11AC in the dense Wi-Fi networks. To meet the requirements, the Wi-Fi experts in global companies submitted technical contributions to the IEEE 802.11ax task group as individual members. Among the contributions, only the proposals supported by at least 75% of individual voters can be finally adopted as a part of standards. In this competitive process, with dozens or hundreds of Wi-Fi global experts in 802.11 standardizations, the technical leadership with intensive R&D investment is one of the key factors to become successful participants in Wi-Fi standards development. Our company vision is the best way to predict the future is to invent it. To accomplish this vision, we strongly believe that to participate in the standardization is the most appropriate way to change the future with our ideas. Since 2012, we have been technically contributing to the standardization process for LTE Advanced, 5G radio, Wi-Fi 6 and 7, MPEG-H 3D audio, and VVC codec standards. Consequently, the standard essential patents are a key driver for the WILUS business by recouping the investment from the licensing. Through this, we can continue to focus our efforts on breakthrough R&D for next generation standards development. Since the very beginning of Wi-Fi 6 standards development, WILUS has actively participated and contributed to the 11AX standardizations as one of top technical contributors. We submitted more than 90 technical contributions with almost 30 adopted contributions. Technically, we contributed to the main features of Wi-Fi 6, such as OFDMA, MU-MIMO, and special reuse, in order to provide the benefits like fast throughput, higher capacity, and fair coexistence of legacy Wi-Fi devices. As a key innovator of Wi-Fi 6 standards, WILUS joined the pool formation from the beginning and contributed to the successful launch of Wi-Fi 6 patent pool with several innovators. The patent pool is an efficient way for WILUS to recoup the R&D investment rather than engaging in bilateral negotiations with individual licensees. Also, I think the patent pool can accelerate the market adoption by removing the uncertainty of the royalty risk of the technology adoption. Wi-Fi 6 approved Lyft model is an alternative scheme for sponsoring the adoption of new technology for implementers. Adjusting the royalty payments based on the global market penetrations of Wi-Fi 6 technologies can incentivize the new standard adoptions to the licensees. With Lyft, since the Wi-Fi 6 pool is made more flexible and attractive to the potential licensees, they can join the pool as quickly as possible.
Because Wi-Fi 6, many patent holders with lots of patents, and there will be many implementers as well of this standard in the market. The only way to get the license situation resolved, in our opinion, is through a patent pool. Yeah, so for standard essential patents, we always consider patent pools because we believe those are the most efficient way to license between multiple patent holders and many licensees. Also, creating more transparency in the market and a better level playing field for the implementers. Of course, we also have the licenses, if desired, available on a bilateral basis, but we would recommend implementers to go through the pools. Yeah, so one of the benefits is that it's usually quicker to get standards in the market. If the standards are in the market, to get better license penetration, so we get money quicker than doing it all by ourselves. The other benefit is, of course, that in a patent pool, there's a pool administrator who will do all the work. We don't have to set up our own licensing team for that particular standard to license out. That's quite efficient and beneficial. Yeah, with a single license agreement, you get access to many patents for multiple licensors, which is easier than to go around, check with each of the licensors for the license and also for the patents, because they are evaluated in the pool, so they are of good quality, and also because there's a standard license agreement with standard terms. It's more transparent in the market, and you have more certainty for a level playing field in the market as an implementer. And of course, avoiding litigation. Yeah, so Lyft is a concept where earlier licensees pay first a fraction of the royalty, and then it increases with the success of the program. More and more licensees sign up, and this prevents or this avoids the problem that we usually have in patent pools, that nobody wants to jump in first, because paying full royalties from the start may be a competitive disadvantage. So by paying only a fraction from the start and more later when others sign up as well. We have alleviated that problem. So that is good for implementers, and what is good for implementers also is good for the pool, and hence for patent holders. We believe that this avoids a holdout in the market, and more implementers will sign up earlier, which is beneficial. Yeah, the main benefit is that we don't pay the full royalties from the start. This is the general advantage, with only a fraction. And then over time, when also others in the market pay royalties, the royalties will go up to the normal level. So that's the main benefit. Other benefit, of course, is that we have certainty of having a license, and we're avoiding risk of litigation. Yeah, so we are a founder and also licensor and licensee of many patent pools. So we have a lot of experience with that. And of course, we always hope that enforcement is not necessary and that all implementers will sign up immediately. But that would be naive to think that, because that is not the practical experience that we have, because for implementers generally, it's financially also beneficial to hold out and not pay royalties from the beginning. And that is not fair to the patent holders, and also not fair to other implementers who are decent enough to sign up for a license. So a strong enforcement mechanism is therefore necessary for leveling the playing field and to be fair to other licensees. So this is basically fair play. Now, in this particular Wi-Fi 6 pool, also with the Lyft concept, we made it quite easy to sign up as a early licensee, because you only pay a fraction of the royalty. So there are not really good reasons to hold out. So we do hope implementers will sign up earlier, but if there is holdout, then enforcement is also more necessary, of course. Further, the Lyft concept itself is also an incentive for the pool and the licensors to make sure that implementers do sign up early, and if necessary with enforcement, because the royalties paid will go up depending on the penetration. So the more success the pool has with implementers signing up, the more revenues will come in through the pool. Oh, very common. I think all the patent pools I know do have an enforcement mechanism. And I think almost all, most of them will have at least pending litigation against one or more targets. Because patent pools license to a lot of implementers, and there are always some that are late or unwilling to take a license, and then enforcement is necessary for the integrity of the whole program.
I want to thank the panelists for all the contributions and to help shedding a light as to why the launch of this pool is so important. I think it was really striking to be reminded about the impact that Wi-Fi as a technology has on our society, and about the trillions of dollars in revenues that this technology has been able to generate, to unlock. And ultimately, if all of this is possible, it is very much thanks to the investments in innovations that have been made by companies that are participating to our pool. And so if companies who are innovators in this space are to continue creating investments to the greater benefit of the society as a whole, their R&D efforts really must be rewarded. And this is the primary reason why this pool has been created. But equally, it has been created with an intention to create an easy access to the licenses for the patents by all these key contributors to the creation of the Wi-Fi 6 technology. And ultimately, patent pools are always key in areas in which the complexity of the technology is very high. Whenever there is complexity, and in particular if there is a requirement of interoperability between devices of different manufacturers, typically the best way to bring about innovation is through standardization. The creation of standardized technologies are an answer exactly to this requirement of interoperability. And whenever there are standards that address this complex and often widely participated standardization efforts, then we need pools in order to make sure that all relevant rights can be accessed through a simplified licensing activity, through one single agreement, as it is true for pools. So this is the reason why Sisvel is very key on creating patent pools in vibrant markets and technologies like Wi-Fi. And we have been deciding to create this pool with a group of patent owners that have strong patent holdings with clearly relevant patents to the standard. And as always, for pools run by Sisvel, there is a very thorough evaluation process, making sure that only patent owners and only patents that are truly essential to the standard are admitted to the pool. We have been crafting the terms of this program in order to accelerate the time to market, and we have been specifically deciding to defer payment of a substantial portion of the royalties, so to make sure that there can be a true level playing field, a situation in which the early licensees are not discriminated, a situation in which the early licensees are not forced to pay the full royalty until and unless actually their competitors will also pay. Ultimately, we really hope that Lyft will be perceived as a great feature for early adopters, but it is equally putting pressure on Sisvel to actually generate a quick market success, because otherwise we are simply not going to have the full system to work. And against this background, I want to stress that this pool has been primarily thought as a pool that would like to quickly penetrate commercially the market. But nonetheless, the patent owners that are together with us in this patent pool and Sisvel, as always, have a clear resolve to make sure that we can achieve a level playing field. And that, if needed, will also be done with the use of litigation, because truly, from our side, we don't see any reason why licenses should not be taken very promptly, given the availability of this new innovative royalty structure. Now, I would like to share with you the fact that you will be able to access the recording of this webinar also at a later point in time. It will be made available on our blog, so you're going to be able to access all the contents again. But now I would like to move to speak about the questions that have been raised by the audience, starting with the first question that has been shared with us. And I would like to inform you that there is still time for you to actually pose questions and make sure that you can get answers. So please use the chat function in case you are interested to pose any question. So the first question that we have been receiving is, will the royalty fees for implementers change if new companies join the patent pool? I would ask Andrea to address this, given that he's the program manager of the program.
Thanks, Mattia. This question can be interpreted in two ways. I don't know if the person asking the question was referring to companies as licensors or licensees. When it comes to licensors, this is a patent pool, so we would like to stay as close as possible to the standard definition of a patent pool, and so unless the number of patents that we represent dramatically changes, then there would be no change in the royalty rate. When it comes to the licensee side, instead, the number of licensees that join the pool, that take a license, will influence the percentage of the theoretical royalty rate that gets paid. Because thanks to the Lyft scheme, the percentage of the theoretical royalty rate that gets paid on a quarterly basis is changing based on the licensing penetration of the pool. So more licensees, a higher percentage of the theoretical royalty rate. That will anyway stay. The theoretical royalty rate will not change, as already said.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for your answer. So allow me to continue with the second question. Will the later submission and assessment of Wi-Fi 6 standard essential patents from the pool licensors have any influence on the Lyft payment scheme? If yes, how?
I will take this again, Mattia, thanks. So this question has a similar answer to the one that I already gave. In the sense that the Lyft scheme starts from, or the Lyft algorithm, if you want, starts from the theoretical royalty rate. And so the theoretical royalty rate is what doesn't change, let's say, based on what I just answered to the previous question. Once that is set, and it is set already, then the licensing penetration will be assessed, and the algorithm of Lyft will determine on a quarterly basis how much of that theoretical royalty rate gets paid by all licensees. So the answer to the question is actually no, it doesn't affect it.
Andrea, a new question that I think should be answered again by you just came in. What is the aggregate royalty rate that is applied to the pool?
We have, as I was showing in my slides during my recording, we have a standard rate and a compliant rate, one for enterprise access points and one for the rest of finished products. So the one for finished products, for all finished products, is $0.60 the standard rate, and $0.50 the compliant rate, while the rate for enterprise access points will be $3.60 the standard rate, and $3 the compliant rate.
Very well. Another question that we received just a few moments ago is addressing something that perhaps Bo or Andrea could comment on, but any of the panelists should feel free to contribute if you like. The question is, will those who hold out pay substantially more than early adopters?
So I can take maybe the first shot at it, and then give it to both to expand maybe my answer. So the answer is it depends. So the structure of Lyft is meant to give fair conditions to everyone that are based on the licensing penetration of the pool at any point in time. So the early adopters will pay a smaller percentage of the theoretical royalty rate because the licensing penetration will be low. But as long as the licensing penetration increases, then this percentage will increase. And thanks to the discounts, let's say, to the benefits for early adopters that Bo described in his intervention, early adopters will gain access to some benefits, which will increase in time. So we made it so that basically Lyft incentivize early adoption, but also the later comers will be treated in the same way, because the same percentage of the royalty rate that will be paid by the early adopters will be paid by the licensees who will join later. So at any point in time, everybody will pay the same amount. Bo, I don't know if you want to complement.
Sure, I can add just a little bit. I mean, more theoretically, I think the way that you set it up is good. We'll see how people respond, of course. But this idea that giving some people an advantage for being early, I think, is the key to being fair. If the F in Fran, the fair part, right? So people that come in early would be disadvantaged if it wasn't that people coming in later maybe had to pay a bit more, or that the people coming early paid a bit less. So it's not discriminatory to allow this people to come early to have an advantage to people to come late. To me, that's the essence of being fair.
Thank you very much. Allow me to move to the next question then. Do you consider giving a license to intermediate products or chipsets? Andrea, given that you manage the program, I think, again, we need to default on you.
So the short answer, thanks, Mattia. The short answer to this question is no. We will address finished products. The details of the licensed product, so what we grant licenses, or which level of product we grant licenses to, is detailed and defined in the sublicense agreement, which we make available on our website. So in there, everyone interested can look at the wording of the agreement and can know exactly what we address with this licensing program, with this patent pool. But the answer to the question is no. We will not address intermediate products and chipsets.
Thank you. Bo, I think the next one could be for you, if you would be feeling comfortable. What about niche market players or standard contributors like Neurocom, or many other smaller players? What might be motivation for niche players to join this pool?
Well, I can give a little bit of a discussion of this from my deliberations with the European Commission. I know that, for example, the Commission is interested that SMEs and small companies can participate in this in a way where the terms are transparent and that they're not disadvantaged in any way. So if we believe that these smaller actors, that this is most beneficial for them, then the Lyft model, I think, would be very useful for them, because, again, there's not penalties for jumping in first, which, of course, SMEs need to be concerned about, especially in niche markets where if their competitors don't jump in and they jump in, they could be at a disadvantage. So I think this model helps out the SMEs just as much as it helps out other companies.
If I may add one comment to that. So I think the question is also about, so on one hand, the market, say the small implementers, but also the small, the niche standard contributors. If I look at the question here, yeah, I think it is very obvious that most of the smaller implementers do not have their own licensing department. So there is a lot of benefit of having Sisvel do that job for you and go through a patent pool, because otherwise it's basically impossible.
Thank you very much. The next question has been addressed to us by administrator. And the question that I'm receiving is, if those who hold out eventually pay the same, what is the incentive to become an early adopter? Also tendering the offer to discuss bilaterally, but I would not know with whom, unfortunately. So I think it's best if we discuss it in any event here. Well, the notion that they would pay the same is wrong. In fact, Lyft is both a tool that is seeking to generate a level playing field, but is also a tool that is generating solid incentives to obtain the license early. And in fact, as you have been told by Andrea, but equally as we have been portraying in the short video that we have been sharing with you, there are elements like a discount and appreciation that actually make the early liability that has been deferred reduced over time. That is a strong advantage, in particular if coupled with another element that we should stress. Lyft is not available for companies who are bad actors, for companies who decide to hold out, for companies who try to abuse the system. And this, I believe, is the biggest check and balance that is present in the system. So whenever we would be considering a company unwilling, that company would no longer have access to Lyft and to all the benefits that it entails. Therefore, of course, in an extreme situation, a company that would be litigated by one of the patent pool members and for an action that would be considered a pool enforcement action would actually target a company that will no longer be available to enjoy Lyft. And therefore, we think this provides a very strong incentive to good citizenship behavior. But mostly, we like to look at the positive side of Lyft and look at the fact that we reduce the barriers to be a good citizen, to take an early license. And I believe that there are a lot of players that recognize the need of taking licenses. It's just an issue for them, the fact of potentially be put at a disadvantage vis-a-vis one of their competitors or several of their competitors. So generally speaking, there is a pattern of several companies holding out that results in a systemic holdout that results in a situation in which probably licensing discussions are exacerbated. There is an increasing use of litigation, all elements that we are trying to prevent by rolling out Lyft. I would welcome any other input, but I felt this was precisely directed to me, so I felt I needed to answer. So if any of you have additional points.
If we're going to discuss a little bit about, why, I mean, the pool in general is positive, as you say, it reduces transaction costs. If you can create it in a way that takes away any disadvantage, that should incentivize people to participate, of course, more than even just the benefits of the pool. And when we talk about prisoner's dilemma, that's a rational thing, right? People, the person doesn't want to jump into the pool until everyone jumps into the pool. That's rational. So you need some type of structure like Lyft to overcome that. But once that's overcome, it would seem strange because almost all implementers that I talk to and all the ones that have spoken to the European Commission that I've listened to have said that the transaction cost is a big issue in transparency, and you're solving those two major issues without creating disadvantage. So it would seem strange that people would still not necessarily want to participate, knowing that they have to take a license for Wi-Fi eventually.
Thank you very much for the contribution. Unless there are additional comments on this question, I would like to pose you a couple of questions in addition to the ones that we have been receiving so far, starting from the following. Patent pools have been actually promoted by antitrust authorities and governmental agencies for decades. So there is a strong endorsement from governmental authorities. And yet, not always patent pools are able to quickly be a wide market success. Do you think that, given also the fact that we have been making Lyft available for this specific patent pool, it will still make sense for people to challenge the license offered by the pool and hold out? And here I am looking at Alan or Jako to provide an answer to this point.
I can say something to this question. Yeah, I think there are two things I want to note. First, I think this pool for the mechanisms it has, for the patents it has, it's an improvement over the previous and earlier known pools, and those earlier pools have many times often receive clear green lights from the antitrust authorities by weighting the benefit, meaning the efficiency and the potential concern, which is basically a gathering of competitors. So authorities have been giving green lights to patent pools because they are efficient. And this pool, I think again there are two important factors that is really promoting further the efficiency. First of them is the Lyft. I think it's promoting the new technologies, the adoption of the new technologies here, in our case, is the Wi-Fi 6, and the standards and technologies are competing with each other. So the standards, for example, it has to compete with earlier generation of standards. It has to compete, for example, in our case, cellular standards. And so standards has to have its benefit in terms of cost and effectiveness. So Lyft is providing a mechanism for attract early adopters, not just as a licensee, but also as the early implementer of the standard. So that's the first thing. And second thing, I think one important aspect of this patent pool is, as we note, is concentrated on the contributors, the standard contributors. You've got WILUS, Philips, of course, Huawei, and MediaTek, and those companies are really the ones contributed much to the standard in the standardization process. And so you got many patent, important and very valuable patents in the pool. And in our own experience, because we have already been certifying our patents for the pool, you've got all sorts of technical questions back from the patent verification process, and there have been tough questions asked by really special attorneys in different jurisdictions specialized in the field, which was engaged by the pool. So you don't really get that sort of questions in any other technical negotiations. Typically when you enter into technical negotiation or licensing discussions only with most sophisticated companies, that you've got challenges of your patents. But in this case, there had been, as we observed, scrutiny, real scrutiny of patents to ensure that the patents in the pool are good, and we can maintain a high level of quality for the pool, as you would note. Again, the companies are the licensors now in the pool are the main contributors to the standards.
Thank you very much. Jako, I think this was very complete, and you have been commenting in part already.
I think so. I have not much to add to what Alan just said. Yes.
Fair enough. Thank you. Then I'm afraid, Andrea, another element that is relating to the structure and the offering, so it probably goes to you. If early licensees who enjoy Lyft as a benefit commit a material breach, do they lose their benefit?
So the short answer is yes. I will elaborate a little bit more on this because, Lyft was born, as Mattia was saying, to reward good citizenship behavior. So let's say that the contract will protect who behaves according to the rules, if you so want. It is not the case that a material breach is something easy to commit under this sub-license agreement that you can find online on our website, but there are some circumstances that classify as material breach, and there is a certain amount of time that is given to the licensees to cure this material breach. So it's not like if you commit a material breach, then the day after you lose all the benefits and you lose access to Lyft. That's not the case. We provide a decent amount of time to remedy to your material breach, but eventually, if this material breach is not cured, then yes, you will lose the benefits that you have gained under Lyft, and potentially you will see also your agreement terminated.
Thank you, Andrea. I think this should be pretty clear. Allow me to pose another question, and this is probably going to be the last question, given that we don't want to keep this webinar all too long. do you think that a group of committed licensors who are also willing to license bilaterally is a positive or a negative element for the adoption of pool licenses? And is there any different assessment for this specific pool, given that Lyft has been rolled out as a royalty scheme? Jako, Alan, I mean, probably for everybody really this question, but Jako, would you like to lead?
Sure. Yeah, so I think for any pool, it helps if the patent holders, the licensors in the pool, are also active licensors. Of course, everybody has to provide bilateral licenses, but active licensors help to also improve the pool's success. Because if implementers know that patent holders are not active, they have less incentive to take a license. About the Lyft concept, I think for now it's specific to this patent pool, Wi-Fi 6 pool of Sisvel. So we have not implemented something like this in our own programs.
Thank you, Jako. Alan, any
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I want to just add that Huawei does have a number of ongoing negotiations and even litigations with respect to Wi-Fi, including Wi-Fi 6. So the thing is, licensing through a pool is just more efficient. No question about it. And so you're basically, you have this, even without Lyft, you have this good number of patent owners. They put patents all together, and you license them all together. You negotiate all together, and somebody would does the technical negotiation for the licensees and for the licensors, really for both sides. So this is an intermediate service, and is promote the efficiency. And for us, although we are very lucky, we are very happy that we now have this pool mechanism to save bilateral licensing costs. We may still have in future cases want to open new bilateral negotiations because in some cases, for companies like ours, may have a range of standards, may have a range of patents. And the other side may also have a range of products and patents. So in a cross licensing setting, maybe bilateral licenses are still could be potentially more efficient than pool license if there's again a cross license of a big range of standard essential patents. But I think if we're just talking about a small set of patents, a small limited range of standards is more efficient to license through pools. And this efficiency, I don't want to understate it because the litigation cost and the licensing cost, you have the team has to have experience. If they work on one project, they cannot work on another one. It could be very expensive, and this expense would have to be eventually borne by somebody. And unfortunately, if we do it, if the licensing professionals cannot find a way to do it efficiently, such cost will eventually be borne by the consumers. So I think that having the pool to play in the middle of the licensors and licensees really helps consumers to be able to access the new technologies at a lower and more reasonable cost.
Thank you very much. I think this concludes our webinar today. Thank you so much for participating, to all of you. Thanks you for the questions. And I would like to thank again all the panelists, and in particular Alan and Bo and Jako and Andrea for making themselves available for this question and answer session that has been widely used as an opportunity by the participants. So thank you all very much again, and don't hesitate to reach out to Andrea if you have any further inquiries around our Wi-Fi 6 booth. Thank you very much.